Hello everyone and welcome to another video. Now, despite being 9 years old on console and 7 on PC, GTA 5 continues to hold a place in my benchmark lineup. Sometimes I get asked why, so today I wanted to answer that question and talk about why I think it's still a great game for both low-spec and high-end gaming systems. Grand Theft Auto 5 pretty much continuously holds a top 10 position in Steam's most played chart, where the player base is presumably made up of both single player and online figures. Its popularity certainly plays a part in why I keep it installed, but speaking on a far more personal level, and there's just something still quite magical about driving through the countryside at dusk, either with or without leaving a trail of carnage behind me. I can still sit down and play this for hours without accomplishing anything in terms of progress. The game still looks good too, especially with all the settings turned way up, and doing so can in fact be rather intensive on even modern, albeit entry level, graphics cards like the RTX 3050, for example. Considering the game's age, you might not think that this would be the case, but cranking the visual options way up and enabling all the advanced settings along with MSAA can take a serious toll on frame rates. Areas thick with dense vegetation can be a particularly good stress test for any GPU. With a Ryzen 5 3600 and RTX 3050 system, the game is averaging 60 FPS with the highest settings and MSAA set to X4. There are plenty of dips below this and instances where performance increases, climbing to at least 80 on average on occasion. In single player, the processor isn't struggling at all. The Ryzen 3600 is still a strong 6-core, 12-threaded choice, and no in-game areas are going to give it any trouble. This is very much a GPU-limited scenario. As someone who tests a lot of graphics cards that are often paired with a fast modern processor so that I can get the most out of them, the single player experience here makes for a great graphics card benchmarking tool because it will prove quite intensive even with newer products. It should also be said though that the game can be quite CPU intensive on chips with a lower core count, so I always try to include it if and when I test out aging processors. Next up, I tried one of the weakest graphics cards in my current collection. Here is footage of the game running on an AMD Radeon HD 5450, a very low-end card that came out long before the game did. This GPU is ideal for HTPCs and office systems, providing an extra couple of display outputs where necessary. For gaming, it's probably best avoided. In GTA 5, however, we can actually hit a 30 FPS target by lowering all of the quality settings and cutting the render resolution in half. The options menu not only provides the ability to set a lower than native render scale, but we can also choose between DX11, 10.1 and 10 APIs, perfect for squeezing a few more frames out of older hardware. This is a far from perfect experience, of course, but if you are desperate to take a drive through Los Santos and don't care that it looks like a PS2 game, the ability to absolutely decimate the visuals is very welcome even today. I find it interesting that this game can be both very demanding and extremely easy to run, which I think is very important for all PC games. Maximising the range of hardware your game can run on maximises your audience. If 30 FPS isn't quite enough, we can also disable the shadows by changing the shadow quality value to 0 in the settings.xml file. This is a literal game changer for low-end graphics cards that might be struggling otherwise. Using this tweak with the 5450 in fact is actually perfect and meant that in my test I went from scraping 30 FPS to averaging over 40. This makes a massive difference sometimes. It's not worth utilising on higher end cards as it does make quite the visual impact, but it's there to be used if you need it. When it comes to GT Online, regretfully I've seldom tested it, and I know I should because it is more intensive than single player, especially when it comes to CPU utilisation. The more action that's going on, the more the processor will suffer, but what I decided to do here is pair an old GTX 650 with a modern dual-core Pentium G7400 to see if we could get playable frame rates with very modest hardware. The two Golden Cove cores and hyper-threading on the Pentium certainly help out, but I was certain that we'd be getting a far worse result here because of the lack of physical cores. Nice to see it doesn't take an incredibly expensive system to play online either, though I am using the lowest settings here at 1080p resolution, and performance will vary significantly depending on what you're doing and where you are, as well as how many other players are in the game with you. Overall, GTA 5 can be a great stress test for modern hardware at higher settings, and a good example of how to cater for lower end users with entry-level systems, and it's that inclusivity and accessibility that keeps me testing it. This, combined with its continuous popularity years after launch, ensures that it still holds a place in my benchmark roster, but let me know how the game performs for you with your system down below in 2022. Thank you very much for watching. If you enjoyed this one, leave a like, leave a dislike if you didn't. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already, and hopefully I'll see all of you in the next one.